Welcome to our presentation. We're going to be speaking about the art of UX writing. And without further ado, I would like to tell you about what you can expect today. After a brief introduction from our side, I will be speaking about the basics of UX writing, defining it, telling you about the rules and the key concepts, which is a more theoretical part. Then, for you not to fall asleep, we have a short theme exercise. We'll be divided into two groups. You'll get to know the details later. And then we'll be speaking about writing with empathy, and Aleshane is our expert on accessibility, so I will leave the stage to her. The two of us both work at SAP currently. Aleshane is a senior user assistance developer. She's had a lot of experience with UX writing, covering different products across multiple platforms. I've been at SAP for 2 years. Before I worked as a translator, so technical writing is sort of a new field for me, but I was surprised by how much there is to know besides the technology to actually be a good technical writer. So before I start my part, my question to you would be, have you come across UX writing, or hands up for everyone who has done some UX writing in their life or career so far? So let's say about half. Okay, great. Then I hope I will have something for you that enlarges your knowledge maybe, or keeps you interested. And for those who don't know much about it, this is basically from someone who has learned it just 2 years ago, what it all entails. So I hope you find it interesting and you understand better what it encompasses. My first part is about what UX writing is. We will check a little theory, the definition, and also see the importance of it. And I will start with a brief UX writing in a nutshell. This is actually my favorite definition because it's not a technical one. It says UX writing is about creating an empathetic dialogue between the user and the product, making the experience intuitive and delightful. There is a lot of emotional intelligence involved in this definition. The more technical one about UX writing actually refers to it as to crafting the text which appears on the digital user interface. So that includes anything from labels, from buttons, menu categories or lists, through error messages to even the onboarding instructions when you enter a product or page or an interface. So what basically you are doing with UX writing is you are guiding the users effectively through the digital journey that they have to take. And this for me is what makes UX writing really essential in design, because it's the way how to reach to the user. What they see, what you design is the visual part, but the writing is what you say to the user, so they still follow and don't feel frustrated because of it. What I see often is that UX writing is confused with copywriting. There is I wouldn't say there is a gap, but there is a distinction between UX writing and copywriting. And the basic one is that UX writing focuses on user interaction. It focuses on writing, I wouldn't say sharply, but clearly and in a simplified manner to the user, what action they need to take, what's happening with the product. It should really guide them through the journey in a seamless manner. While if we check what copywriting is about, it entails texts that target marketing. More often, they are the brand voice, which might want to, I don't want to use this term, but I have to manipulate the user somehow, because this is basically copywriting is used to maybe catch attention, while UX writing is basically for you to keep the user informed about what they need to do. They already have your attention because they already use the product. Copywriting happens on a different level, and the voice can be more colorful. The strategy of writing is completely different because there is a different motivation behind the text. I would like to speak about the importance in digital design because since I started working in corporate, sometimes I've heard my colleagues saying, we can just think of the name later. Oh, they will understand I use this term on a daily basis. And it's true. There are terms that are generally acknowledged by the entire world or by the specific target audience. But what seems absolutely natural to one person might not seem natural to the other one. And there might be thousands, hundred thousands, or even millions of users for specific products. So the importance of UX writing specifically in digital design is that it has to enhance user experience because it goes hand in hand. The design can be incredible. If they don't understand the text, the design is not going to help them. Not entirely. Partially, of course, yes. Another thing is that good UX writing actually directs users without any obstacles. It should offer seamless navigation through the product. It should follow strict rules. So if there are no deviations in writing, then the user doesn't get distracted by something that might not be related to the action that they need to take as next. So in essence, UX writing actually builds trust and it reduces friction because it should avoid all obstacles that users have when using the specific product. And if it creates trust, it creates more efficient design. And also by that, we can enhance overall brand credibility, which is what we want to do with our users, basically. The key principles of UX writing that I mentioned here, for me, they are also the basic rules to follow when it comes to writing for user interface. And you can see that some of them were actually mentioned in the initial definition that I shared with you. So from my point of view, the crucial part is prioritizing clarity because we have to ensure that users know what action they have to take and why they are taking the action. This form of writing also has to include empathy. When I was discussing AI with my presentation, it said you should say this form of writing champions empathy because it wanted to emphasize that if you really can include empathy in your writing, that's the level on which you really want to connect with the user in the end. So empathy is a vital part. It's acknowledging what your users' needs are, and you should be designing intuitive pathways for the specific user that you are acknowledging is there. You are guiding the user through the interface, through their digital journey. So it is essential to support them in achieving their objectives. So also their objectives have to be clear for you to know how to navigate them properly. And by this, UX writing follows a user-centric approach, which basically means that you are really communicating with the person who is there in front of the interface. It's basically that you are not writing for them, you are telling them what they should be doing. That's why I included the quote, if it sounds like writing, rewrite it. So if you write something from the interface, you write an error message or something and you read it, and you say, this sounds like something I would read in a manual. We want to enhance that because the user wants to feel like he's being talked to by someone who knows how to use the product. And we achieve this basically with using the active voice, which is also in 99% a vital part of UX writing. I just made up the number, of course. So we use the active voice because it addresses the user directly, while the passive voice sometimes feels like it's passive information, but it doesn't tell me what action to take. So it really matters if you address someone in a second person or if you just inform them in the third person what's happening.
Yes, and with that, and I'm hoping I am more than just a ghost voice that is coming from somewhere random.
We can see you.
And okay, good, good. Hi, I'm sorry I couldn't be here. I couldn't be there today. But I am Aleshane, and I want to ask you if you know what language this is. And I can't really see you, so my next question would be, do you know how to order a camera from Amazon, even if you don't know this language and you are facing this screen? Would you know how to buy a camera from here? Can I have a yes or a no? Ashka, did someone answer anything? I would say that even if we are unfamiliar with the language, we can still understand the situation, right? We can somehow understand the dynamics of this screen, the layout of the elements, and whether you visit Amazon from, it doesn't matter the language, it doesn't matter the country that you are logging in from, the design is consistent, their design is good. It makes the life of the user easier. And just like that, if we can go to the next slide.
Definitely. I just have an obstacle here.
We can finish the purchase with just one click. It is simple as that. However, if you are facing the next screen, yes, if you're facing this screen here, do you know what to do? You probably don't, because I would say that when we are talking about enterprise software, when we are talking about software that is supposed to support different actions from the user, they don't have such strong elements that will help us understand our next move. And also when we are talking about these big and important apps that we are working and developing, they usually include a lot of business data, and we have a lot of error with the content that the user is putting into the software. So that's when text becomes really important. And for me, when I look at this, I feel quite scared. I am sure that many users, they won't read past the first line, because this word forbidden sounds scary, these technical terms, this 403, this all of this, it's information that we can't process really well, right? And then can you go to the next slide, please? What does it mean? What does it mean in practice for us, right? So what does it mean when we are talking about UX writing and about our daily work, and what we have to keep in mind when we are writing system messages and text that will go to our interface and that our customers, they will face, they will have to read it. We have to always remember that system messages, they are meant to be seen, and that we have to be friendly. They have to be friendly messages, not scary ones. We shouldn't use a lot of exclamation points and all of that, because that scares our users. And we have to always use clear and simple language. So we have to always keep in mind that we have to tell our users what's wrong and how to put it right. So we have to keep in mind that they are doing something, they are trying to achieve a final goal. And if they face an error message, for example, as the one we just saw, it means that we are interrupting their workflow, and they are already feeling disturbed by themselves because they are frustrated. Something went wrong. We don't want them to be even more frustrated. We don't want them to panic or stress about what to do. If we're giving them a message, we should say, this is wrong, and this is what you have to do to get out of this situation. And in that context, we have to always, of course, be polite, be positive, and be helpful. We don't accuse anyone of anything. And when I say be positive, that is a problem, that is an error. And then I'm not saying, hey, cheers, fireworks, we have an error here. That's not what we mean, but we have to say that in a positive way, so then we don't make the situation even worse. And we are also not supposed to be alarmists, right? So we don't cause panic. We don't say you are disrupting and we will lose all of this data in the system and the company will be shut down. We don't say things like that. And we also have to be mindful about how we use words like please and contractions. I would say it's okay to use them because that's how we talk, right? We usually say, I won't go. So it's fine if we write like we say, because we want to have this conversational tone, and that's what we have to say. But of course, if we have this super complex English contractions, then we shouldn't use, because we most probably we don't say it. Yes, can we go to the next slide so we can see a few examples? So here, for example, we explain the error and we provide to our user the course of action that they should take. So I don't say invalid data. This is just saying that something is wrong. So I want to put it in a positive way. I say enter data from 1 to 31. So I'm saying what they are supposed to do, not what they did wrong. And we also have to be positive and we are not blaming our users. So instead of saying you entered the code with the wrong length, we say enter a 5-digit code because that's what they're supposed to do. I don't have to blame them. I don't have to say, hey, you did something wrong. I would just say what my system can handle, what is right. And they will understand by that. That's what they should do. And we also, again, we don't create panic. If something went wrong, I don't know what to do. I just say contact your system administrator or whatever is the course of action that your developer will tell you to write, and then you will say it. And many times I have sat down with my developers and I say, okay, and what's the user supposed to do now? And then they will say, I don't know. And then I'm saying, okay, but then if you are the person who is creating this and you don't know what's supposed to do, how do you expect your end user to know what they should do in this situation? So let's figure it out together and let's give our user the answer and a course of action for that. Yes, and to do all of that, we have to understand what people need, right? So we have to be able to provide the right level of information that our user needs. And for that, it's really important that you know who your audience is. So if I am writing something, if I am writing a content that I know will be used by a technical person, then I know I have to give him technical input. I know I have to give this person what's the technical name of that object, because that is the technical person who will be implementing something, which is very different if I'm writing something for someone who is a decision maker. It's someone who will decide if we will implement the latest updates that we have released or not. So it's really important that we know the product that we are working with and we know who is the person that will be using that, because that will tailor a lot how we write the content and how we have to give, how much information we have to give to our users. And then that, of course, comes together with understanding their concerns when they are at work. So I understand the needs that my user have, and I also put their goals first and the product is just in the background. So for me, and we tend to a lot say like, this app does that. With this app, you can blah. But for the user, honestly, it doesn't matter which app they are using. It matters that they are solving their problem. For me, it doesn't matter that today I am here talking to you using Microsoft Teams, or if I'm talking to you using Zoom, Google Meet, whatever. It doesn't matter. It matters that I'm here, you are there, and you can listen to me. So when we are giving them the information, we are solving their problem. And that's how we should communicate with them, not putting our software in the center of what we are doing, but put the person and their needs. And we have to always remember that all of these people, when we are talking about end users, like they're these people who are really distant and that we have maybe never talked to with, but they are actually, they're just people at work. They're just someone like me, like you. They are busy. They can't manage to have everything that they have to do done in the 24 hours that we have available in one day. They have competing priorities. They use different products throughout the day. So they have to understand different logics, and this happens automatically in their brain. And they are just using our product that for us, we, the person who are working with that every day for, I don't know, 3 months to have something delivered, that is really something important for me. That is my project. For my end user, that's just another app that they will use to get their job done. And at the end of the day, they want to feel that they did well at work, that they managed to complete all their assigned tasks successfully, on time, and to the budget. So always keep in mind that we are here to help our users to get something done. So we are here to help them, guide them, give them the course of action, and never blame them for something that they have done. And then Bashka, if we can go to the next slide. Here we have some really user-centric examples from day-to-day tools that we use. The first one is from Microsoft Teams. Second one is from YouTube. Third example is from LinkedIn. All of these images, they convey a really light and even like a playful tone, actually, of error messages, of telling to the user that something is wrong. And in all of these texts, they follow the same approach. They explain what's happening with the system and they give an alternative solution. So for example, this middle one for YouTube, it says, the page is unavailable. Sorry about that. It doesn't accuse the user. It doesn't say, you've searched for something that doesn't exist. No, it's just saying this is unavailable. You've reached a page that doesn't, yes, and then try searching for something else. So it's giving the search box below and it's giving the user a new course of action, an alternative to solve their problems. All of these messages, then they keep the user informed about what's happening. They say what the system is doing and they give an alternative to accomplish that task. While these other examples, yes, they are not the most appropriate ones, I would say. This first one says, grass, you broke it. So we are really blaming the user for something that poor him, he just accessed a website and there it is. Like, no, they didn't break anything. They shouldn't carry this heavy way of breaking a website. It's not their fault. And also, these other websites, they use a lot of slangs. And then, of course, you have to follow the corporate tone that the company you work for uses. And we know that there are companies that are way more playful. Like in Brazil, we have this app, it's called iFood. It's like the boat. I'm from Brazil, by the way. But it's like boat that you have there in Czech Republic to have like food delivered and so on. And this iFood one, they are very silly and they give you all of these like silly notifications of what's going on with the influencers' lives and so on. They have this really informal tone, which I think matches their personality. However, I've already seen so many news on newspapers of people saying how bad the tone was, because when we joke, we can easily offend someone. So that is something that's really important and that we have to be mindful about. So I would rather play safe than being too playful sometimes. And with that said, for you to not get bored, we want to invite you for some exercise.
Okay, guys, thank you, Aleshane, for this bit. If you could divide into two groups, the entire room into two groups, if it's possible. We have a team exercise for you. It will last 10 minutes. You don't have to be worried. It's basically just putting in practice what we just spoke about with regards to writing or enhancing messages for the user. So I'll let you divide first. I'm sorry you have to physically move, but that's also not bad. And our time is up. If we can wrap it up, please, you can return to your seats. But thank you so much. I see that you were really thinking and trying to apply what we've learned so far. It was really nice to see that you did a good job.
Yeah, we also have done it, right?
Sorry?
We also have done it. So if you can go to the next slide. We also came up with our own proposals. And maybe I would suggest we just go over one of the 5 sentences that we had just because of the time. But before I read it and comment on it, I want you to remember these are just proposals. They're not absolute perfect examples. If anything. We didn't have context either, so we just made them up based on our understanding. But we want to show you that we can make system messages to be more helpful and more friendly. We can tailor them, adapt them, turn they around to make them sound positive. And everything that we are applying here, we are talking about sentences and short messages, but you can amplify and apply it to all the content that you write, be it in the system, a help guide, or whatever. So first sentence that we had was account X not assigned to org Y, transaction not allowed. Our suggestion is actually just to say what you should do, right? Transaction not allowed. Is that needed? I mean, we're probably in the app trying to do something which wasn't allowed. If we're getting an error message, it means it's not allowed. It means we have a problem. What do we do to solve this problem? We say it in a positive way. We tell the user directly what to do. Assign account X to organization Y. Again, same example below, unit not filled, we turn it around. We say what they have to do. Enter a unit in the respective field, or in the blah, we say the name of the field. We tell the users actively what they have to do. Only unit days is allowed for LOA. What the hell is LOA? I have no idea. But that happens. Sometimes we're so used to an acronym that we just think everybody knows what it means, right? So then, again, positive, saying it in a positive way, telling the user which action they should do. So enter leave of absence in number of days. Then fourth example, category cannot be changed because of time account references. We are saying it in a negative way. We are telling them what they cannot do. What do we want to do instead? Turn them around and be helpful. So what do they have to do to accomplish what they want to do? Remove the time account references before changing the category. It means then the system will allow them to perform whatever action they're trying to do. And finally, action not saved, no org assigned. Again, positive formulation. Assign an organization unit before saving. Just tell it like it is in a positive way using an active verb. Everything that we tell, like, we are always giving the user instructions. We are always telling them to do something. So we don't have to always use please, because at some point they will get tired of this word, because we are always telling them to do something, and they actually want us to tell them what to do because they want to get out of the situation. I would use please if I am telling them, I give them a set of steps and we are on step 19 and I'm telling them to do something, then maybe I would use please. Otherwise, they are reading my contact because they want to get something done. And then despite the fact that I do have to be polite and don't use aggressive, in the sense of not using aggressive words, I don't think we have to use please, because otherwise we'd have to say please all the time.
I also have my own distinction when to use please and when not. We're speaking on the level that I can decide myself. Of course, there are product guidelines and standards that we need to follow, and they are always above what we want to do ourselves or how we feel about the writing. But I've came across an example that it's good to use please in your product at the point that it's basically your product's fault that they need to do something or something didn't work out. So if there was some glitch, something that happened, and they have to reload, refresh, start again, you say please because it was not their fault that this situation occurred. But then if you're giving them instructions that they need to follow, it might serve as a redundant word. So yeah, we're skating on thin ice with the politeness because sometimes it's on point, it's to the point, and sometimes not. Thank you everyone for the exercise. I'm happy that you were so proactive. And since I know we're taking a lot of time, I'm going to move towards the second part of the presentation, which is writing with empathy. This sounds very abstract, and it's also going to stay very abstract probably, but whatever I do, I find that emotional intelligence is a vital part of everything. And if we include it in our not only daily lives and like basic human interactions, but also in our work, it helps greatly to create a better product. And So what I did was I borrowed one quote which says, if we have optimism, but we don't have empathy, then it doesn't matter how much we master the secrets of science. We're not really solving problems, we're just working on puzzles. So what we have done before is we spoke about creating a more optimistic voice. So we're not panicking the user, we're telling them it's going to be okay if you do this and this. But I feel this is still not enough. In UX writing, you have to not only bring them hope and optimism, but you also need to have empathy to kind of get on the level, get in the user's shoes to understand what they're going through. Aleshane spoke about that before, about that our users are normal people who are working with our product, with tens to hundreds of them. And the other quote I share is, empathy is one of our greatest tools of business that is most underused. And I feel that in corporate world, it's slowly, emotional intelligence is on the rise, that like employers are trying to take better care of their employees because they realize that our well-being actually also reflects on the product quality. And we also have to think about this in the level of our product being promoted through users if they feel good using it. And it includes the word feel good, which means that empathy or emotional intelligence has to be there. So what emotional intelligence is basically is the ability to recognize, understand, and somehow manage our own emotions. But that's only half of it. The other half is the ability to recognize, understand, and influence or help process the emotions of the others. And in the realm of business and specifically UX design, emotional intelligence basically is essential because if we can manage to get to the level of the user with user-centric approach, we can address emotional needs and concerns of the users. We guide them through the journey, and it might be a bumpy ride, but we want them to not be frustrated in the end, so they give up with the product entirely. So what I would say is that in UX design, you have to research a lot. There is the concept of user personas that we use often, and also mapping their journeys. So we need to know who our target audience is. We need to understand what their needs are. And if we map their user journeys, if we map from the point zero to the successful end, what the steps need to be, then we can understand where the pain points lie. And during the pain points, this is where empathy comes in, because that's where we see, okay, so the user has this problem and it's difficult to set it up in the system so they don't get confused. So you have to address them through writing in a way that they're not going to give up halfway through. And yeah, I wanted to just mention their motivations and challenges, but that's basically just a different way of saying pain points. So I just mentioned the most important techniques for empathetic writing here, which, as mentioned before, is understanding your audience. If you research and identify the needs of your users, then it can give you a different perspective to how to devise the text so they would feel like you are actually helping them with the product and not making it a pain in their life. If you use emotional intelligent feedback, which means if you provide responses or the system provides responses through your writing that acknowledge their emotions, like frustration during errors, you foster empathy and they might be more prone to trying to correct the mistake. So you don't tell them, you've made a mistake, you say, this can be avoided if we do this and this. So it stays more neutral. Of course, it's very important to use inclusive language. The aim of it, of course, is so the product feels welcoming to our users, because we might sometimes not be aware of the user perception. So it's very difficult for us sometimes to not use judgmental language, because also if, for example, we're writing in English and English is not our mother tongue, it might happen that we don't know the colors, the nuances. Language is colored, of course, so emotionally colored. So we might not understand the nuances, and this is something that we really need to take care of during writing, so we don't offend anyone. So that's why it's good to use clear, concise text, to also never try to use as many synonyms as possible, because the user wants to know we're talking about the same thing. In like, for example, in copywriting, as I mentioned before, if we are if we are writing about something, we try to use colorful language so they don't get bored, but we're talking about the same thing, or might be talking about the same thing. But if you want to guide the users through the interface, you want them to know that we're still talking about thing A. We don't call it by names thing B and thing C, even though they are synonyms, because that might cause a lot of confusion. And of course, we have to show understanding and support, keep the optimism, the positive voice, and keep consistency to avoid confusion, as I mentioned, with sticking to a specific terminology. A lot of products have developed terminology standards and guidelines, so it's always good to follow them. And if there are more people working on one product, it's very important that you align on the terminology, because everybody feels like what they've written is clear. But if there are 5 writers, they write 5 different messages on one single case. So you always have to align with your colleagues if you work on the same thing. And the last thing that I have here is aim for accessibility, and I'm leaving the words to Aleshane.
Yes, we have a whole set of slides to talk about accessibility, and this is actually a topic that I could talk hours about. We were thinking when Bashka and I were discussing and deciding what we wanted to talk to you about today. One of the things that we wanted to was also mention the topic accessibility, because this is really important. And then we had many different things and approaches we could take to it. And instead, we decided to bring you practical tips that you can already start applying to the text that you will leave this room and write. So if you want to go to the next slide, Bashka, please. The first thing that I would have to say is how we write. So be brief, be bright, be gone. Keep this in mind. So when we are brief, we should delete all these fluffy things that we put in our text, because sometimes I just want to look at a flower and say how beautiful and yellow and bright and whatever it is. But at the same time, when we're talking about accessibility, I can easily make someone lose focus. So be brief, be bright, go to the point and talk about what you need to talk about. I was there yet, if you don't mind going back.
Sorry.
Yes. So be bright, honestly address the problem. So tell the user what's happening, give him a light, be bright, help them, but always bring also the solution and a positive outlook. So what we have been talking for the last hour, tell them what the problem was and tell them how to get out of that situation. Give them an idea on how to solve the problem, so they don't have to use their mental and cognitive capacity to figure out how to solve it. We are here to help them. And lastly, be gone. So communicate your idea in the simplest way possible, guiding the customer to the next phase of the journey. And one thing that's really important when we are talking about a global audience is that English, again, as Bashka said, is not their first language. So when we are talking about a global audience, we keep it simple, because if we use a hard word, they probably won't know what that means. If I have to Google a word, I'm guessing that probably my end user will also have to Google it. So be brief, be bright, be gone. Next one. Always include an introductory sentence when you will introduce a bullet point, a graphic, an image. All of these different types of elements into your text always include an introductory sentence. Why? Because it helps with assistive technology. When we are talking about accessibility, we have to think about the wide range of users we have. And there are people who don't see or have limited capacity, and they use assistive technology. So it's way easier for them to understand that what's coming is an image if we introduce this image. It's way easier for them understand that that bunch of random sentences that will start to come up is a list of actions if we say in the following list. So if you go to the next slide, Bashka, we actually have here some examples, and I am a huge fan of explaining complex concepts in bullet points because I think it's way easier for us to digest it. So always when we have complex solutions that have to be explained to customers, I tend to break it down into different subsections or into different bullets because it's easier to digest and understand the little pieces of it. But in order to do so, you have to really make it clear that that's what you are doing. And here again, we have small examples, but you can always amplify and think of how when you're structuring a whole text instead of just doing a small list. But for example, this first one says, before you can create purchase requisitions, purchase orders, scheduling agreements, you must have the relevant authorization. Imagine if you don't see it and you don't really understand this is a bullet point. It's way easier to understand what's about to come if we put it in a way of saying you must have authorization to create the following documents. Then I know what's about to come is a list of different documents that I have to consider for this sentence that was just said. The same with graphics and images and so on. Next one, please. URLs. So always provide a textual reference to the website that you are sending your users. So if you want to add text, if you want to add a URL to the text that you are writing, don't simply paste the URL or don't say this link and then put the URL in this link. No, it has to be clear. If you're using, again, an assistive technology, it is saying, it will tell the user, I don't know how many of you have tried it, and it's actually very interesting. I had never used it, and then I just downloaded it, closed my eyes, and tried to figure out what was happening. Of course, I still have a lot of bias. I still know what's going on the screen. I still all of that. And I was so lost. So the assistive technology, it will say when a link is about to start. It will say, visit us on hyperlink, SAP brand tools, end of hyperlink. It will say it's a hyperlink that's starting and that's ending. So then we should really give the textual content of what that hyperlink is, to make it clear if they want or not to access that hyperlink. Alternative text, always, 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 if you have an image, if you have a graphic, make sure you also have alternative text. Otherwise, again, with assistive technology, it will just say image. And then very often I have received emails in which people just created a bunch of images and they put them together, and these images had a lot of text and blah, blah, blah. It was like an email newsletter, for example. But if we have error with the images, then we just have like broken image, broken image, broken image, and the email really doesn't add any value at all. So if you are using images, make sure you have alt text. If you have graphics, make sure that the content of your graphic is also explained in a text format. We have to keep in mind that screenshots, graphics, these are alternatives to the text that the user is reading. It's because we need some input to help and explain a complex context, but they're not the main source of information. So always make sure you explain the same thing in the written format, and then you add these additional images, graphics, interactive graphics, whatever it is that you are working with. Even GIFs, I think they're really nice, but they are only there to support the content. Culture neutral language. So really, we have to be mindful about it, to not use words or phrases that imply cultural biases. So don't use Christian name. We say first name. We don't say Christmas bonus. We say holiday bonus. We really should be mindful about the words that we use. We should be mindful about the names that we use in examples. We shouldn't always use European names, for example. We have to really think about how inclusive we are being. with the words that we choose to use. And I would say there are even some verbs that we have alternative verbs that convey a way better meaning. For example, in technology, we are really used to using the verb execute when we say we want the user to perform an action, or we say abort when we want the user to quit something that they are doing. But we do have verbs that are more appropriate than abort and execute. We can use exit, we can use run, we can use perform. There are many verbs that don't have this negative connotation that can be used instead of verbs that have negative connotation. So we can really be mindful about the verbs that we are using. No using discriminatory formulations, so don't refer to people by their disabilities. Here we have a few examples. So 15% of the world's population are handicapped. We can say people with disabilities, employees with disabilities. We don't have to say the world's population suffer from disability. We can say live with a disability because these people don't suffer from it. We can't decide if these people suffer from it. And honestly, with AI today, if you write a text and you are not really sure about the verb that you're using, the adjective that you're using, just ask AI. It's here to help us. It will give you a prompt to reply. Active voice, I can't stress this enough. Always use active voice. Address the user by you. And if we are explaining a flow, for example, I will tell the user what the user does, and I will tell what the system does in reply. So I will say, for example, you enter your invoice. The system exchanges the invoice with the tax authority. So it's very clear that the user has to do the action of entering the invoice, and that as a result, the system will send it to whatever it's supposed to send. We have to make sure we make it clear who performs each action, so the information doesn't get lost on translation on the way. It's really important to use active voice. Contrast, I think most probably you are all designers or work very close to the topic, and you already worry about color contrast. But when we are writing, this is also something we have to care about, that we have enough contrast with the letters, the text, and the background, so people can read. And we are not talking only about blind people, but we are also talking about people, like I wear glasses. So if we had this text in a yellow color, I would probably not be able to read it, because the more contrast we have, the better it is to understand the content. The mystifying concepts, not overcomplicating them. So then keep your language clear and easy to understand. That's also what we have been saying. It helps a lot for us to don't get distracted on the way, don't get lost into the line of thought and processing. And final tip for today is using headings. I know sometimes when we are writing a text, be it an email or writing a Word file, we tend to usually, if I want to make the title, I will select the title, then I will make the letter bigger by pressing the bigger button, and then I'll press bold because I want it to be highlighted. But if we do it manually, then again, the assistive tools, they won't be able to differentiate the different sections. So if you're using Microsoft tool, for example, Outlook, if you're using Word, Excel, always make sure to use this style option, heading 2, heading 3, because then if someone is reading the PDF file you have generated with assistive technology, they are able to jump from one section to the other, and they can easily navigate the content.
And this was our last slide. And before we thank you, I actually, based on what Aleshane was mentioning, I'm going to tell them, Aleshane, I wanted to do like the patterns or colorful background for PPT because we worked on it together. And I'm the kind of a person that I like to overwhelm myself with extensive patterns, colors, and everything. So this image, which was in a much bigger contrast, I put it as a background to every slide we had. And then imagine Aleshane presenting about accessibility, and what her colleagues does is I made the slides inaccessible completely because I just followed what I like. And on my computer it was good to see, but for example, if there was different lighting or anything, it would be impossible to read some parts. The zeros and ones would interfere with our original text. So this for me was like, it's okay that we make mistakes, and this is why we have to attend these sessions to actually keep in mind that there are rules to follow, because I also, what I'm presenting to you, I have a list of things that I address regularly so I don't make the same mistakes again at work. So this is just a final note that we're on the same boat with this, and we would like to thank you for your attention for today.